Serbs are often accused of trying to appropriate others' culture. Are Serbs trying to appropriate Dracula? No. Historical person Vlad Tepes Dracula was ruler of Transylvania. Transylvania is part of Romania. But the whole myth about Dracula being vampire comes from Bram Stoker. Historical Dracula was called the Impaler because he used to impale his enemies. There is nothing about him drinking blood. How do Serbs fit into the story of vampires? Earliest historical cases of vampirism appear in Serbia. Let's start from the beginning. Serbia was under Ottoman rule for 400 years. But there was a short period when Serbia belonged to Habsburg Empire. In 1718, Ottomans had to give Sanjak of Smederevo to Habsburgs after the war. Sanjak was an administrative unit in Ottoman Empire. Habsburgs established Kingdom of Serbia from Sanjak of Smederevo. Habsburg Emperor took the title of King of Serbia. The kingdom existed until 1739, when Habsburgs had to return the land to Ottomans. During 1718 till 1739, Habsburgs governed Serbia. They made many discoveries, including the fact Serbs believe in vampires. Naturally, Habsburg officials wanted to prove the existence of vampires. They wrote detailed reports about what was happening. In 1725, Serbian peasant Petar Blagojević died. He was born in 1662, which means he was 63 when he died. For that period, 63 was advanced age. There was nothing suspicious about Petar's death. In Austrian reports, his name was misspelled as Peter Blagojević. Foreigners often misspell Serbian names, which I find to be insulting. How can I be sure the name was misspelled? There is no letter W in Serbian, and our last names don't end with Z. Petar lived in a village named Kisilova. There is no such village in Serbia. But there is a village called Kisiljevo. Why did Serbs believe that Petar Blagojević became vampire after his death? Petar's death was followed by a string of sudden deaths in the village. Within 8 days, 9 people died. This is a huge number for a village. On their deathbeds, victims said they were throttled by Petar at night. Petar's wife said he visited her and asked for his shoes. Petar's wife was so scared that she moved to another village. The villagers decided to dig up Petar's body and examined it. They were looking for signs of vampirism. Serbs said those signs were growing hair, beard and nails, and the absence of decomposition. Serbs knew what they were looking for because Petar wasn't the first vampire they saw. The representative of the Austrian administration attended the exhumation. His name was Frombald. He wrote a report about what he witnessed. Serbs told Frombald that vampires killed whole villages. Serbs were ready to abandon their village to save their lives. None of Serbs expressed any doubts in the existence of vampires. Even village priests agreed with the villagers. Frombald confirmed that the exhumed body was undecomposed. The hair and beard were grown, blood could be seen in the mouth. Villagers proceeded to stake the body through the heart. Fresh blood flew through the ears and mouth of the corpse. In the end, the body was burned. Frombald's report was published in newspapers in Vienna, Austrian capital. The story about vampires began to spread across Europe. In 1726, another vampire appeared among Serbs. He was named Arnold Paole in the reports. Arnold Paole is not Balkan name. Paole might have been Pavle. Arnold might have been Arnaut, old name for Albanian. So instead of Arnold Paole, there is Arnaut Pavle. Arnold Paole was described as Hajduk, which means militiaman or outlaw. The village is called Meduegna. Do I even have to say there is no such place? There is Medveđa near Stenik, Serbia. After Arnold Paole died, there was a string of sudden deaths in the village. Austrian military doctors Glasser and Flukinger left reports about the case. In the past, Arnold told villagers that he was plagued by a vampire while he lived in Turkey. He cured himself by eating soil from vampire's grave. Arnold's coffin was full of blood when he was exhumed. Villagers drove a stake through his heart, and Arnold shrieked. Afterwards, his body was burned. The same was done with 4 other bodies who showed signs of vampirism. Arnold was responsible for the second outbreak of vampirism in the village. In 1731, more than 10 people died within several weeks. Glasser's report brings the list of names of Arnold's victims. All names are misspelled. The most ridiculous example is a 9-year-old boy named Vučica. The right spelling would be Vučica, but that's not all. In Serbian, Vučica means she-wolf. No person in Serbia would name their son she-wolf. Boy's name would be Vuk, Vukan, Vukašin, or Vučko. Back to the main story. The dying complained of stabs in the sides and pain in the chest. They had prolonged fever and experienced jerks of the limbs. Glasser writes that 2 women started the outbreak. He names them Milica and Stano, which were probably Milica and Stana. Both women had contact with Arnold in 1726. Serbs believed that those who had contact with vampires during their lives would turn into vampires after their deaths. Arnold infected the women in 1726 and they died in 1731. One of the women died during childbirth. This means vampire infection waits for someone to die and then reanimates the body. Flakinger said Milica ate the meat of sheep killed by vampires. This was how she was infected, by consuming tainted meat. In 18th century Europe, people liked to read about occult. In 1746, Benedictine monk Augustin Calme wrote about occultism. He mentions Serbian Hajduk named Jotiuco. I cannot even guess what the real name was. The Hajduk's daughter was killed by a vampire. Why is Dracula more famous than Peter and Arnold? There was nothing appealing about elderly peasant and Hajduk. Dracula was young prince. There is his castle and his portrait. No wonder Bram Stoker chose Dracula as the vampire. Also, the name Dracula is catchy and easily pronounced. Still, Peter and Arnold are not the most famous Serb vampires. That honor goes to Sava Savanović. It is impossible to say when Sava lived. He lived in a watermill on the Rogačica River. The watermill is near Zaporozhye village in the municipality Bajna Bašta. The watermill was working until the late 1950s. The mill collapsed in 2012. The municipal authorities released humorous public health warning. People were advised to be careful because Sava Savanović was now looking for a new home. What made Sava famous? There are no reports about his victims or how he was defeated. Serbian writer Milovan Glišić wrote a popular short story called 90 Years Later, Serbian posle 90 godina. In the story, Sava only attacks people who enter his mill. Local villagers need a mill to work. They made a deal with the young man Strahinja. Strahinja will kill the vampire. In return, the villagers will help Strahinja abduct the girl he loves. Just to make it clear, the girl Radojka loves Strahinja and wants to marry him. Her father is the real obstacle. When a vampire is killed, a moth leaves his mouth. One has to kill the moth to truly destroy the vampire. Strahinja managed to kill the moth. In 1973, a horror movie Leptirica English, The Moth, was made. It is based on Glish's short story, but many things are changed. Do Serbs still believe in vampires? Majority does not believe in vampires. We now know that the signs of vampirism are normal for body decomposition. Can we confirm that vampires originate from Serbia? First documented vampires were from Serbia, but the myth was accepted across the Balkans. Vampire burials were discovered in Bulgaria. It is impossible to say who adopted the myth from whom. Some believe that the word vampire comes from Serbian word vampir. Other Slavic nations use word upir to describe bloodsuckers. The 19th century English writers used the word vampir. Did Serbs believe in other supernatural beings? Yes, Serbs believed in many creatures from Slavic mythology. Serbs don't believe in ghosts haunting houses. Interestingly, Serbs never accepted the idea of werewolves. Wolf was tribal animal of Serbs. Weak child will be named after wolf to get strength. Serbs did not accept all Slavic mythological creatures. Serbs don't believe in Baba Yaga. What about Jure Grando? Jure Grando was Croat who lived in 17th century. He was described as Strigoi and not vampire. Strigoi was a mixture of vampire and warlock. Petar Blagović remains the first person who was called vampire in historical sources. When did vampires disappear from Serbia? We don't know when Serbs stopped believing in vampires. Ottomans were never interested in writing reports about occult. Either way, Serbs contributed to the world of Gothic creatures.